Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The gun trembled in Julian's hand, the cold steel a stark contrast to the feverish heat consuming his body. But Valerian didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't even spill a drop of the amber whiskey in his glass as he stared down the barrel. "Pull it," Valerian commanded, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that vibrated through the floorboards of the penthouse office, sounding less like a victim and more like a god demanding a sacrifice. "Don't tell me what to do," Julian choked out, his vision blurring with unshed tears, the betrayal sharp in his chest. "You lied to me. For 10 years, you looked me in the eye and lied. I protected you," Valerian corrected, taking a slow, deliberate step toward the muzzle, his dark eyes, voids of obsidian that had haunted Julian's dreams since he was 16, locking onto Julian's shaking form. "There is a difference, little brother." The title snapped something inside Julian. He fired. The bullet didn't hit Valerian. It shattered the crystal decanter on the mahogany desk behind him, spraying alcohol and glass like shrapnel. Julian dropped the gun, his knees hitting the carpet with a dull thud, sobbing. It was the moment the dam broke, the moment the boy died, and the lover was born from the wreckage. To understand the bullet, you have to understand the silence. For 10 years, silence had been the third resident of the Thorn estate. It lived in the spaces between Valerian Thorn, the 34-year-old patriarch of the city's most ruthless crime syndicate, and Julian, the 24-year-old ward he had plucked from a burning orphanage a decade ago. Valerian was a man carved from marble and violence. He was 6'3" of intimidating muscle, usually clad in Italian three-piece suits that cost more than a senator's salary. He was the city's shadow king. To the world, he was a monster. To Julian, he was the savior who had pulled him from the ashes, the man who had given him a home, a name, and a life of luxury. He was also the man Julian had been secretly in love with since his 18th birthday. But Valerian had drawn a line in the sand. "Brother," he wielded the word like a weapon, a shield to keep Julian at arm's length. He played the role of the stoic guardian perfectly, ensuring Julian went to the best universities, wore the finest clothes, and remained untouched by the grime of Valerian's business. But Julian wasn't a child anymore. He had graduated top of his class. He had honed his body in the gym until the softness of youth was replaced by the lean, hard lines of a man. He had learned to shoot, to fight, to negotiate, all in a desperate bid to be seen as an equal. Yet, every night at dinner, Valerian would look at him with those unreadable eyes and ask, "How was your day, Julian?" with the polite detachment of a stranger. Until the night of the winter solstice gala. The ballroom was a sea of silk and diamonds, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and hidden agendas. Julian stood by the champagne tower, looking ethereal in a white tuxedo that contrasted sharply with the sea of black suits. He knew he looked good. He had dressed for an audience of one. "You look like an angel who took a wrong turn," a voice purred. Julian turned to see Cashin Vane, the heir to a rival syndicate. Cashin was handsome in a predatory way, with a smile that showed too many teeth. "And you look like a vulture circling a carcass, Cashin," Julian replied coolly, sipping his drink. Cashin laughed, stepping into Julian's personal space. He reached out, his fingers grazing Julian's waist. "Sharp tongue. I like that. You know, Thorn keeps you locked away in that ivory tower of his. It's a waste. A bird like you should be. Handled." Julian stiffened, ready to slap the hand away, but before he could move, the air pressure in the room seemed to drop. A hand, large and calloused, clamped onto Cashin's shoulder. It wasn't a friendly grip. It was the grip of a predator claiming its territory. "Remove your hand." Valerian's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a death sentence. Cashin paled, looking up into Valerian's cold fury. "Valerian, I was just complimenting your ward." "My brother," Valerian corrected, his grip tightening until the fabric of Cashin's suit strained. "And if you touch him again, I will remove the offending limb. Do we have an understanding?" Cashin snatched his hand back, muttering an apology before disappearing into the crowd. Julian turned to Valerian, his heart hammering against his ribs. He expected a scolding. He expected the cold shoulder. Instead, He saw something in Valerian's eyes he had never seen before. Hunger. It was gone in an instant, replaced by the usual icy mask. "We're leaving," Valerian stated, grabbing Julian's elbow. "The gala isn't over," Julian protested as he was marched toward the exit. "It is for us." The ride home was suffocating. The partition was up in the limousine, isolating them from the driver. Valerian stared out the window, his jaw clenched so hard a muscle feathered in his cheek. "Why did you do that?" Julian asked, breaking the silence. "He disrespected you. He flirted with me." "That happens, Valerian. I'm an adult." Valerian turned, his gaze snapping to Julian. "You are a target. Men like Vane don't flirt. They assess value. He sees a weakness he can exploit to get to me. Is that all I am?" Julian challenged, shifting closer, the scent of Valerian's sandalwood and tobacco cologne filling his senses. "A weakness? A liability. You are my responsibility," Valerian growled. "I don't want to be your responsibility," Julian shouted, the frustration of years boiling over. "I don't want to be your ward, or your brother, or your charity case." "Then what do you want to be?" Valerian's voice rose, cracking the calm facade. "Yours." The word hung in the air, heavy and electric. Julian hadn't meant to say it, but now that it was out, he couldn't take it back. He watched Valerian's pupils dilate, the older man's breath hitching. For a second, Julian thought Valerian would kiss him. The distance between them was negligible. He could feel the heat radiating from Valerian's body. Then, the car swerved violently. Metal screeched against metal as an SUV slammed into the side of the limo. Glass shattered. The world spun. Julian was thrown across the seat, but before he hit the door, arms wrapped around him, strong, iron-like bands. Valerian pulled him into his chest, curving his massive body around Julian's to shield him from the impact. The car rolled. Once. Twice. When the world stopped spinning, there was only darkness and the smell of gasoline. "Julian." Valerian's voice was ragged, right by his ear. I'm okay," Julian gasped, coughing. He was pinned beneath Valerian's weight. "Good. Stay down." Gunfire erupted outside. Valerian kicked the warped door open, dragging Julian out into the rainy night. They were on a deserted stretch of highway, flanked by woods. "Run," Valerian ordered, shoving a spare pistol into Julian's hand. "Go to the safe house. Do not stop. I'm not leaving you," Julian screamed over the rain. Valerian turned, his face illuminated by the headlights of the attacking SUV. Blood trickled down his temple, staining his white collar crimson. He looked terrifying. He looked magnificent. "Go," Valerian roared, turning to fire at the shadows emerging from the vehicles. Julian hesitated for a fraction of a second, then did the only thing he could. He didn't run away. He ran for cover and took aim. He wasn't the helpless boy Valerian thought he was. He fired, dropping a man who was flanking Valerian's left. Valerian glanced back, shock warring with pride, before he focused back on the fight. Together, they moved like a synchronized unit, a deadly dance of two souls who knew each other's rhythms perfectly. By the time the sirens wailed in the distance, 6 men lay dead on the asphalt. Valerian slumped against the guardrail, clutching his side. "Valerian." Julian dropped the gun and scrambled to him, his hands instantly coated in warm, sticky blood. "It's a scratch," Valerian wheezed, his face pale. "It's a gunshot wound, you stubborn bastard," Julian hissed, tearing off his white jacket to press against the wound. The safe house was a minimalist penthouse in the city center, a place few knew existed. Julian had stitched Valerian up on the kitchen island. The bullet had passed through the fleshy part of his oblique, painful, bloody, but not lethal. Now, Valerian sat on the edge of the velvet sofa, shirtless, a bandage wrapped around his torso. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind a raw, throbbing tension. Julian stood by the window, watching the rain streak the glass. He was still wearing his blood-stained dress shirt, the top buttons undone. "You shot 3 men tonight," Valerian said quietly. "It wasn't an accusation. I did what I had to do," Julian replied without turning. "To save you. I told you to run. And I ignored you. Get used to it." Julian turned, his eyes blazing. "Stop treating me like I'm fragile. I killed for you tonight, Valerian. Doesn't that prove I'm not your little brother anymore?" Valerian stood up, wincing slightly. He walked over to Julian, stopping inches away. The size difference was palpable. Valerian towered over him, broad and imposing. "It proves," Valerian said, his voice rough, "that I failed. I wanted to keep your hands clean. I wanted you to have a life of light, not this." He gestured to the dark room, to the blood on his own hands. "I don't want the light if you're not in it," Julian whispered. He reached out, his fingers trembling as he traced the ink of a dragon tattoo that curled over Valerian's shoulder. "Why won't you let me in?" Valerian caught Julian's hand, gripping it tightly. "Because I am rot, Julian. I am decay. And you are the only pure thing I have ever known. If I touch you, I will stain you." "I'm already stained," Julian countered, stepping closer, pressing his chest against Valerian's bare skin. "Your blood is on my hands. Your enemies are dead by my gun. It's too late." Valerian's resolve cracked. The mask shattered. He let out a low, tortured sound and slammed Julian against the glass window. "You have no idea," Valerian growled, his face inches from Julian's, "how long I have wanted to do this. How many nights I have paced the hallway outside your room, fighting the urge to break down the door." "Show me," Julian challenged, tilting his head back, exposing his throat. "Stop being my brother. Be my man." Valerian didn't need to be told twice. He crashed his lips onto Julian's, a kiss that tasted of iron, whiskey, and 10 years of suppressed longing. It wasn't gentle. It was acclaiming. It was a storm finally making landfall. Julian moaned into the kiss, wrapping his legs around Valerian's waist as he was hoisted up. They moved blindly toward the bedroom, a tangle of limbs and desperation. Clothes were torn, buttons flew, and the line between guardian and ward was obliterated, replaced by the primal dynamic of lovers who had starved for too long. For 3 days, they didn't leave the penthouse. They existed in a bubble of intimacy, exploring each other's bodies with a reverence that bordered on worship. Julian learned that the fearsome sovereign of the underworld unraveled at the touch of Julian's lips on his neck. Valerian learned that his sweet, innocent ward had a fire in him that could burn the world down. It was perfect, until Julian woke up on the 4th morning to an empty bed and a single envelope on the pillow. Inside was a plane ticket to Zurich, a deed to a villa in the Swiss Alps, and a bank account number with enough zeros to last 3 lifetimes. And a note. Asterisk, "I cannot be the monster who devours you. You are free. Don't come back. V. Asterisk." The betrayal was a physical blow. After everything, after the blood, the confession, the intimacy, Valerian had panicked. He had reverted to the noble protector, deciding for Julian yet again. That was how Julian ended up in Valerian's office that night, gun in hand. "I protected you," Valerian repeated, standing amidst the shattered glass of the decanter Julian had just shot. "You abandoned me," Julian screamed, tears finally spilling over. "You slept with me. You made me believe we were finally us. And then you tried to pay me off and ship me away like a whore you were done with. I sent you away because I am dying," Valerian roared. The silence that followed was absolute. Julian lowered the gun, his breath catching. "What?" Valerian slumped back into his chair, looking suddenly older, defeated. He ran a hand through his hair. "The Vane family. They didn't just attack the car. They poisoned the supply chain 3 months ago. A slow-acting neurotoxin. I have maybe 6 months. If I'm lucky." Julian felt the room spin. "You? No. I wanted you in Zurich so you wouldn't have to watch me rot," Valerian said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I wanted you safe when the power vacuum hits. I wanted you to remember me as I was, not as a corpse." "You idiot," Julian whispered. He crossed the room, stepping over the broken glass, ignoring the crunch beneath his shoes. He walked around the desk and grabbed Valerian by the lapels of his suit, shaking him. "You absolute, arrogant idiot. Julian, you think I care about safety?" Julian hissed, his face wet with tears. "You think I want a life in the Alps while you die alone in this godforsaken city? You are my life, Valerian. If you have 6 months, then I want 6 months. If you have 6 minutes, I want those too. I can't ask you to." "You aren't asking," Julian shouted. "I am telling you. I am not your ward to be sent away. I am your partner. And if you are dying, then we are going to spend the next 6 months burning the Vane family to the ground so that when you go, no one will ever dare touch what you built." And I will be holding your hand when you take your last breath. Do you understand me? Valerian looked up at Julian, seeing the steel in the younger man's eyes. He saw the reflection of his own ruthlessness, tempered by a love so fierce it terrified him. He realized then that he hadn't raised a victim. He had raised a king. There is no cure, Valerian said softly. Then we find the best doctors in the world, Julian said, his voice steadying. We use every scent, every contact. And if we fail, then we go out together. But you do not leave me again. Valerian reached up, his hand cupping Julian's cheek, his thumb wiping away a tear. I thought I was saving you. You don't need to save me. Julian leaned into the touch, covering Valerian's hand with his own. You just need to love me. Valerian pulled Julian down into his lap, burying his face in Julian's neck. For the first time in his life, the sovereign of the Thorn Syndicate wept. He wept for the time lost, for the cruelty of fate, and for the overwhelming relief of no longer being alone in the dark. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf, not with chains, but with the terrifying promise of forever, however short it might be. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take control and bring the sovereign to his knees, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you stay and fight a hopeless battle for the one you love, or would you take the ticket to safety? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Valerian, older, 34 years old, muscular build, sharp jawline, stubble, slicked back black hair, obsidian eyes, wearing unbuttoned white dress shirt with blood stains, sitting in leather office chair, expression of anguish and surrender. Man 2. Julian, younger, 24 years old, beautiful features, slim but toned, messy brown hair, teary eyes, wearing white suit jacket. Falling off shoulders, straddling man 1's lap, gripping man 1's shirt, expression of fierce determination and love. Background is dark luxurious penthouse office, shattered glass on floor, spilled whiskey, city lights, and rain visible through large floor-to-ceiling window. Dramatic moody lighting, cinematic composition, emotional atmosphere.